Welcome to Ashley On, your one-stop podcast where we talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better world.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today's show is with Guy Needler. He's a friend of the show. We're always glad to catch up with Guy and talk about the state of ascension in our world. In this episode, we talk a lot about the need to lead by example and focusing on true positive value in our actions to set a good example and to also give a good vibration to the world. Primarily, we talk, why should we do this? Well, doing right feels good. It's pretty basic, selfish reason to help benefit society. We talk a little bit more about the body being a vehicle and that we are perpetual, the body's temporary, and that to evolve is why we're here. So, changing your opinions, evolving with more insight and wisdom and changing positions on certain things is why we're all here, right? So I think that's something that we should all keep in mind and is a key theme in this episode as well, along with the reality that if you can find it in your heart to view the world in that others are doing the best that they can as a philosophy of your life will be more happy. So hope you enjoy the show. It's a great one. Guy Needler is always fun to talk to. Thank you. Today's show is brought to you by Morrison Alley. MorrisonAlley.com. You can learn more about their consulting offerings that they offer. Morrison Alley is focused on corporate leadership development services around developing enterprise executives at Fortune 100 companies and providing analytical services and fractional marketing services to B2B and B2C firms of all sizes, which is the area of the business that I focus on. Really comes down to strategy plus leadership plus AI technology equals growth. And you got to have be strong in all of those areas in order to compete effectively these days. Thank you so much. Hello, Guy Needler. Good to see you again. Thank you for joining the show. It's always good to catch up.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be present on your show, and I've seen that it's gained in popularity, which is absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. You've been a big part of that, so I appreciate all your time and energy, and we just love to catch up. I mean, my agenda is really pretty simple with you. It's like what's new, right? I'm excited to hear what you've been working on lately, and we can kind of go from there and take some different directions depending on what you share.
Okay. Well, really, I mean, the latest things we've been working on is the World Sanger books, which we've got a fifth book we're working on right now, and I've got to upload a load of lectures and meditations that aren't on YouTube onto YouTube to sort of supplement the information that's on the book or going to be on the book, because we're going to provide links for people to actually listen to the meditations that are part of the book, and some of the lectures are part of the book. So we're working on that. So I've got about 28 lectures and meditations that are part of the back catalogue to sort of put on YouTube that aren't currently on YouTube. So they spread out over the last, well, basically from 2021 all the way back to about 2013. So there's a little bit of work to do.
And what have you in terms of that work, what are you most excited about? What stands out as most exciting to you and most important?
Well, this is basically it's me giving lectures on things that I'm sort of basically that come to mind, those things that have come to your sort of consciousness that you've got to talk about. And then there's questions and answers that came from that still do come from all over the world. And then we have a meditation normally made based upon the lecture, but not always. And so really it's about, a mixture of lectures, meditations, and questions and answers. But it's the meditations, questions and answers that I find quite very, very, very interesting. But I suppose from the reader's perspective, it's the questions and answers side, because we're starting to find now that towards the end of the last, it's been going now for 12 years. It's an appropriate time for it to finish because everything's based on 12 in the multiverse, bizarrely enough. And it's sort of like the questions are starting to go in a circle. So people are starting to ask the same questions, albeit sort of 3 or 4 years later. Not the same people, of course, but it's the same sort of thing keeps coming out. So although there's a few questions that are sort of new, so to speak, and the answers are therefore new. In reality, the vast majority, about 95% of what we're starting to receive now, is starting to become sort of repetitious in terms of the questions and answers. So there's a few gems that are coming out. Although having said that, I mean, in terms of the thought processes that are coming out, specifically in today's world, there's a few things that are really quite interesting in terms of, how do we elect our leaders? How do we behave as as supposedly advanced and mature civilization? And so there's things that have come up literally in the last sort of 2 or 3 months that have shown us that, if we're going to elect leaders that are basically going to make our decisions for us because we've chosen them because we trust them, then there has to be some form of checksum event that allows a system that is, if you like, aside from, or not part of, or completely neutral from the sort of the electorate, so to speak. So that if we end up with a number of individuals who really aren't capable, but they've got there for whatever reason because the electorate's put them there, then there needs to be some form of checksum in place that says, okay, these people aren't really capable of governing us in some way, shape, or form. So they would be basically told that they can't go any further, and they'd be put to one side, and then we'd invite new individuals to come along. Now, that might be a group of individuals who are, again, party to their own electoral process, but are completely neutral to the election process that's in the location, the country, the hemisphere that they're part of. Or it might be a piece of software that is, it might be a piece of, shall we dare to say, artificial intelligence that can look at the psychology of the individuals, the education, the capability, the leadership potential, the charisma, all these different things, what they've achieved, how they've been of service to mankind, between, the point in fact where their career is to where they are now, and they therefore make the decision for us in a completely neutral and aside way, so that we don't start to choose individuals because we like them. We choose them because they're actually capable of doing the job properly. And that's one of the interesting things that's come out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's top of mind, right? I mean, it's I think we're all feeling a little bit vulnerable right now in terms of what our future holds with the lack of leadership that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm encouraged that this is coming up more in what you're dealing with and the people you're dealing with, and all about, kind of a collective consciousness, because some of the things I see with people, they just blindly follow whatever their favorite team is, regardless of any independent thought or processing as to what really the right decision criteria should be.
Yeah. Well, on top of this, there's like a progression from it. I mean, this idea of having the checksum effect, or the individuals, for instance, if there's 12 individuals and they all say, yes, this person's capable, but one says actually no, then that makes you think whether they've followed the sort of like the collectivism rule, rather than sort of, hang on, they're all being sheep or whatever, and therefore they're not really understanding what's going on in the background. If one person does, then maybe that one person is not being blinded by the others or coerced by the others in some way, because maybe they're charismatic, and therefore you've got the potential to have somebody say, whoa, let's put the brakes on. I'm not seeing what you're seeing. Why are you seeing it? Why are you seeing it? Oh, I'm following him. You shouldn't be following him. You should be thinking independently. And so there's that part of it that comes into it as well. I mean, it's the independent thought process that I'm finding really quite intriguing, because if we have a true level of maturity as a civilization that is with us from an independent individual perspective, then if we have a series of rules, regulations, laws, if you like, or ways of being or ways of existing that we recognize as being the mark of a mature, advanced civilization, one that's capable of going further and moving off the planet, for example, or moving up the frequencies from a spiritual perspective, then do we need leaders? Do we need to have individuals who are put in exalted positions to govern us if we are governing ourselves in a mature way, where we're thinking about not only ourselves but the collective first, the collective of mankind first? What's my choice and what's my decision process now going to do to those around me? How's it going to affect them? How's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect the environment? How's it going to affect their thought processes in the future? And so we start to think about moving away from this idea of having the correct checksum in place to make sure we've got the right type of leaders, to being our own leadership role at all different levels. And then therefore we start to get the dawn of collectivism, not communism, collectivism, where we're thinking not only in an individualized, independent way, but that way is considering how it's going to affect others and the environment and the circumstances and the thought processes downstream. And that, for me, that's a key point, a key milestone. If you start to think about starting to think in these ways, and if I'm thinking about it, there's other people in my level sort of thinking about it as well. And if we are thinking this way, then we're starting to move away from this idea of, we elect individuals as leaders, and those individuals can be corrupt or can start to lose their state of service, of leadership, and become, they want to be in power all the time rather than letting others, take over.
So how would we?
Yeah, so it's interesting.
I love the conversation. How would we unwind like the opportunity? I think just to hear you say this, like, 'cause I've been thinking similar things. I talk to people, and I don't, I'm not plugged into the collective consciousness as a degree like you are, right? So I find this very optimistic and encouraging, that this is what's happening in terms of the total vibration of the world. But taking just the United States as an example, uh, we have a completely corrupt system. Probably 80 to 90% of the people that are our leaders, quote unquote, are corrupt. How do we unwind that? Like, is it are you picking up anything there? Is there any talk or chatter or ideas that you're having in that situation?
It's going to take a quantum leap in the way we think, behave, and act collectively to actively decide, actually, no, we don't need to have a prime minister. We don't need to have a president. We don't need to have a king or a queen or a governor or an emperor or a senator. That we are capable of collectively working together and doing these things. And it's going to be not going to be it's difficult to describe, but it's almost going to be something that happens to us on our conscious level, our sentience, where we decide that we're fed up with this way of existing, which is not actually working, where we're allowing ourselves to proliferate too much, i.e., the population is too great in the world to support it, for the world to support it. That we start to consider that we need to understand that, and I guess this is the milestone, when we start to understand that we're not the human body, that the human body isn't us, and therefore we are in a selfish position where we're trying to perpetuate its existence for as long as possible in the most comfortable and affluent materialistic way as possible. We start to realize that we are perpetual, and we understand it on a fundamental basis, not just in an academic basis where we think, okay, I'll believe this because this individual's got I'll give this individual authority in terms of that thought process, and therefore I'll choose to believe them. But they actually experience something. Now, you might want to call this an out-of-body experience or something prolonged that gives them the understanding that their sentience is, or there's what we call the soul, is perpetual and is part of a larger volume of sentience, and that larger volume of sentience is part of another larger volume of sentience. That we start to recognize that the body is just a vehicle, like a motor car, like a hire car. When we go somewhere, if we haven't got a vehicle, we hire a vehicle, we use it, and sometimes people abuse them, and then we take them back, and that's it. And we go and do whatever we're doing. When we start to understand that on a fundamental basis, then the need for having a governing structure is no longer required, because we start to understand that collectively the sentience starts to connect to in a triangulating type of function, either direct line triangulation or volumetric triangulation. And we start to think, behave, and act not in a hive mind where we lose our individualized free will, but a way where we still have our individualized free will, but it's considering the collective functions, as I've previously said. But that's got to come from a higher level of knowledge or experience where we start to realize that the body's not where we are. And we know that we can exist beyond the body. And therefore, there's a reason to be here, and that's to evolve. And if we're behaving in a way which is not consistent with the optimal level of evolutionary progression or content associated with our interactions with each other and the circumstances we create within the environments within which we exist within, then we start to work in a way which is really of a higher, mature, civilized, advanced way that's going to allow us to ascend the frequencies.
No,
And ultimately get to the point where we've mastered incarnation because we'll have understood how to be in the physical, but not be of the physical and be addicted to the physical.
So that's excellent, Guy. I'm thinking, it makes me think of some of the things that I've read and talked to people about what is it, what does the Great Awakening mean, right? Like, what is that? And that goes into conversations around, how does it even occur? Is that triggered by the sun and systems of light that are triggering this? But even just sticking with the point of what is it, one of the things that sticks out to me that I've learned and that I associate with it, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but that it's basically we're moving toward a system and an existence and a reality where we can't even comprehend the negative choices, like making a choice to where it would hurt someone else. Like we're moving toward a position where that choice will not even manifest itself in our thought process. Am I on the right track there? I'm just trying to help bridge the gap here with what I've heard and also help the audience understand a little bit more in depth of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's a state of beingness where that type of thought process is outside of our consideration, our psyche. Let me give you an example. Most individuals will not consider the fundamentals of the downward spiral that could occur to them karmically by throwing the sweet wrapper out the car window, because that's the start point. Something as simple as that is a start point of thinking, well, I don't need to sort of look, take the rubbish out of my car or the trash out of my car and put it into a bin properly. I can put it out the window because it's somebody else's job to clean up after me. If we start to take responsibility for ourselves, and that state of beingness starts to create a condition within ourselves where we feel good about ourselves, and we understand that, when we do the right choices, it actually makes us feel better, that we are better, that we attract those around us who are also the same thought process, then, rather than collecting together to be of similar mind or process to see, for instance, a football team or a hockey team or a cycling club or a rock group or a golfing professional. These people who we sort of decide to follow because they give us if you like, a horizon line to head for, a state of beingness or wealth, that we start to think, well, actually, we don't need to have these icons because we're our own icon, provided we let ourselves go down that road. And actually, when we do go down that road, okay, it's a bit of a battle at first. Do I open the window to put the sweet wrapper out? Do I drop it in the car? Or do I leave it where it's supposed to be in the sweet wrapper packet, and then the sweet wrapper packet gets thrown in the bin properly at home? So it's making that choice, and consistently making those choices, and how it makes us feel better is going to be the start point of the cascade. And as we do it, and people say, well, why are you so happy? And you explain why you're being happy, and they go, well, I fancy some of that because I'm really quite miserable and frustrated right now, and so doing the right thing, it must create some level of endorphin response within the brain, and but energetically there must be something that creates that level of physical response. And so if we can lead by example then people start to catch on that that person's happy. I want to be as happy as that person. What are you doing? And it's not creating a cult, it's creating a change in thought process.
Yeah, it's excellent. I couldn't be more excited about what you're saying. I mean, it's hard not to get discouraged, right? I mean, I don't try not to watch the news. I really just don't want to get that programming, be associated with that. It was on this morning when I walked through the kitchen because my wife was trying to check out the weather, and I just get this programming of this horrible negativity of all this stuff that's going on here in Denver, Colorado, and it's really hard, right, with the media and everybody that's so interested and intrigued by those negative headlines and that negative clickbait, and it's the fear and the anxiety is just it's constantly being pushed. And so I know a lot of our listeners are listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, yeah, this would be great, but is this real? Like, when's this going to happen, right? Do we need someone to come down from the stars to get our attention? Do we need the second coming of Christ, whatever your belief system may be? Do we need something like that to trigger this, or because it's just so negative, right?
Yeah,
What do you
right.
say to that?
Well, the second coming of Christ isn't a person coming along to save us. It's us saving ourselves internally.
Yeah,
When
I
we're
believe that
Christ
too.
and we're purified. We're, to be Christian means to be purified. And when John the Baptist used to um, wash the sins away of the individuals who came to be taught by him, and therefore his, um, his colleague Jesus, he was basically saying, you can start again now. Forget what happened in the past. Start again as a fresh individual. You're now purified. And to be Christ and to be purified. So the second coming of Christ is us collectively starting to think in a pure way rather than a negative materialistic way. It is so super easy to go down the karmic route of gossip and talk about somebody else and go against them, because we're entering into a level of group communion. You know, a common process. We've got a common subject to talk about. Let's talk about X down the road, who's probably overweight, or he's struggling to walk, or isn't doesn't have a nice car or a new car, is driving a 25-year-old car around. All these different, or doesn't mow the lawn every week. All of these different things are the things that we sort of snap upon. I think, okay, yeah, and we go into it without even thinking about it. It's like falling asleep, and that's basically what we are doing. We're falling asleep. We're falling asleep and going down the frequencies because we choose to be part of the collective, and the subject that keeps the collective together in a negative way is gossip, or any form of gossip, whether it's about an individual, whether it's about a circumstance, whether it's about an accident, whether it's about a state of the weather. If it's negative, and we tend to gravitate towards it easier. So what we need to do as people who are a bit more aware and awake is to change it over and say, well, I don't choose to talk negativity about people. I always see something positive in people. Okay, they might have these traits, but at the end of the day, they're a soul and they're struggling through their incarnation, and they're struggling to exist in a low frequency environment, which is bombarding them every day, every second of every hour of every day, with the potential to gain karma, gain addiction to being here, or have to work out karma in another life. And if we can help them in some way by showing them love or understanding, and then not by educating them fully on, not saying you should behave and act in this way, but shown by example. Again, they say, well, why are you happy? I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Ah, does it make you feel happy? Well, yeah, because I'm feeling refreshed and I'm feeling that, I've got to function in the world, and I'm evolving as a state of it. And that's when you start to see so-called felons or criminals who might, even in prison, they're having this aha moment. Maybe they've seen something, or they've experienced the thought process for themselves, and they realise that, not only can they make a difference to themselves, that maybe they can make a difference to other people by changing the way that they are, and it makes them feel better. and making them feel better makes them go up to higher frequencies. It's not egotistical. It's just a state of beingness. We feel better, we feel lighter when we're in the higher frequencies. And so being the good example is the best teacher of all.
Yeah, it's interesting. It also reminds me of something else that I've recently noticed. Not, I don't really like to look back in life because, I think a lot of the experiences we have get us to where we are, right? You realize certain things about what you did or didn't do, and
Mm-hmm.
it evolves you as a spiritual being. But one of the things that I've been thinking about lately that I wish I would have known when I was younger is it's more of a philosophical it's exactly kind of, I think it's in line with what you're saying, but it's if you look at people in situations, and if your default is the people are doing the best they can, if you default there as opposed to those a-holes are doing this and they're trying to get me this way, like it changes the entire perspective, and you feel better about your life. You feel it's such a much better way to assume that when things happen, that those people are doing the best they can, and they just don't know for whatever reason, or they've got other things that they've got to do, like whatever it is, like somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody is rude to you, or it fires you from your job, or all kinds of things. If you can get to the point where, at least for me, I found this to be helpful. If I can get to that point where I can assume and get to that default, and I'm not perfect at it, it's a constant battle, but I'm getting a lot better at it. That I feel better, right? And I think I think that helps the world because I'm not releasing that low vibration anger and even thinking it, right? If you can just get to immediately, because even thinking that stuff isn't the best thing for our collective consciousness, as I understand it.
That's right. I mean, if we think negative thoughts, even though we might not broadcast them vocally, then that energy sort of is broadcast around and is picked up by us, and we start to sort of get absorbed by it or absorb it. So without doubt, the opportunity to be the good example is the way not only to help us evolve, it helps others evolve because we learn by example. If you look at how everybody learns, it's by example. Okay, we go to school, we go to college, we go to university. We maybe we do doctorates, PhDs, maybe become professors, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the fundamental learning point is when we're in the womb. We the soul is attaching itself to the embryo, getting more acquainted with that particular vehicle as it starts to grow. And whilst it's starting to grow, they're hearing the mother's thoughts, they're hearing the father's thoughts, the potential siblings' thoughts, and other things that are affecting them. And then when it's born, they start to go through the process of being educated by they listen to the way in which the parents and the siblings that they've got them are communicating to each other. So they learn speech, and they learn mannerisms, they learn likes and dislikes based upon the circumstances and the likes and dislikes and the way that the parents think, behave, and act. I mean, how many times have individuals started a career because one of their parents was doing that career? Doctors become doctors because their parents are a doctor, or they become scientists or engineers. I mean, certainly, both me and my brother became engineers because my father was an engineer, and we went down that route. I know people all over the world who become lawyers because their parents are a lawyer, or because they had a much older sibling who was going down that road. So we tend to gravitate towards that which we know. So if we can create a condition where, we're not being educated to do things wrong because one, their parents are out of work, or two, they're on drugs, or three, that they're felons, that we're educated to go in that direction. There ought to be something involved where, if that's the case, then there ought to be a different level of interaction with people to change the education process from going that way to going that way. And therefore, when we start to get that, and we start to get the leading by example and education by example routine going, which creates the start of collectivism, then got the chance of moving away from the mass level of negative thought process and materialism that we're getting now worldwide, and people will start to think in the collective function instead. It's going to take 3 or 4 generations, but if you're starting to think that way independently, I am, others as well, then it's starting to permeate the overall human psyche, and the things that are happening around the world now, people are starting to object it. So no, this isn't the way we want you to govern us or the way we want to live. We want to be able to think, behave, and act in a way which is going to be of benefit to us, allow us to have a nice life, but also allow others to have a nice life as well, which isn't a materialistic thought process. It's a state of, I suppose, nirvana on earth, where we all
That's
thinking,
right.
behaving, and acting in a considerate and caring and
Peace on
understanding way.
earth, right?
Yeah,
Why not peace?
yeah,
It's such an obvious desire, I think, and I think more and more it's becoming that way. And I kind of want to. I'm trying to figure out how to transition this conversation into another area, and I think one of the things that I've been learning a lot about, and I read a recent post that you had posted about something similar too. So it's this idea that there are, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to be sensationalize it for our audience. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's a kind of a tough conversation, but there are, in my understanding, there are entities, incarnates, spirits, things that are outside of our true selves that are constantly trying to um, occupy either our body or our energy fields to survive, I guess, or to get that energy. Um, can you? And I read something that you had posted recently about um, these were called demons in the back in the day,
oh
and then
right,
these demons
yeah.
were encountered by Jesus had some experiences where he cured people, and I think some of the conversation that you had in this post was around him being able to basically remove these incarnates or entities from these other people's fields, and that was the cure, so to speak. Um, I guess, as I learn about this, it opens up a lot of questions. And, like how can we as individuals protect our bodies and our containers from being, parasitic entities or spirits, whatever they may be. And the second part of that is if this is the way that it is, then doesn't that mean probably this is the problem with our leaders, right? Our leaders may be overcome with these sorts of negative influences and therefore may be immune to this evolution of positive thinking that we just discussed. Am I onto
Yeah.
something here? Or what, can you just give me a reaction to this?
It's well understood within certain spiritual, I was going to call them circles, levels of understanding is a better way of saying it. That there are entities that exist that we call them astral entities that exist as a function of the sort of Darwinian evolution of energy over a long period. And there's those that are created by our negative thoughts when we just think negative thoughts about somebody, or we think that I wish this person would this or that. We're quite powerful sentient entities, and we can create these things. Now they exist in frequential levels above where we can see with our physical eyes, and so they exist in the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh frequencies. Now the ones that are in the fifth, the sixth, and seventh frequencies, they're less likely to try to um, overtly take energy from us, because basically the astral entities, although they're created, they're a bit like a battery, can we call it that? They have their own energy for a time, and then they have to take energy from somebody else or something else. That can be any vehicle that's got a sentient um, aspect to it, such as a soul of some sort. And so these entities are above our visual range, but they're still in a range where other um, body types can be incarnate into. I mean, in the physical universe, there's another 9 levels. The first 3 levels where we are right now are to create the gross physical, scientists call it the third dimension, but in my understanding, that's wrong, because dimensions or full dimensions are much higher pieces of structure. That what they're using is a description for volume, which is height one dimension, width another dimension, and depth another dimension. Dimension. For drawing, for example, understanding volume. But these entities can be in these levels, and we can have other body types in these higher levels as well. So there's 9 levels above that. I mean, Dolores Cannon talks about the next level being the new Earth, but and thought it would be people would leave this one Earth and go into that Earth. Well, the answer is yes and no. There's not 2 Earths. It's the same Earth, but higher frequency. So individuals who go into that Earth tend to, through ascension and good living processes, good service-based living processes, are still there. We're still on Earth, and individuals of that level would observe them, perceive them, but people on the lower levels wouldn't, because they're above their visual range, and the visual range is a function also of the use of the spiritual third eye. So there's 2 things happening there. Now, from that perspective, there's obviously body types that we as sentients can be incarnated into in all the different frequencies associated with the physical universe. But there's these entities which are created through the Darwinian evolution of energy and our sort of aggressive thought processes against individuals, that need to continue their existence by taking energy from people. So they take energy from the auric layers, which are basically the waste product of the metabolization of energies from the chakras, which are energy receivers, and the associated energy templates that create possibility of the manifestation of a body form, which in this instance is the human body. So they can take energy from us, and they can occupy us, and they sometimes create a command and control condition where they're governing the thought process of the host, for example. The so-called person who's been told by demons to do this or do that. On the other side, they can create a synergetic effect where the individual can be given a feeling of power or coercive ability or charisma or leadership role, because the entity is giving away a little bit of energy that makes them attractive to others. So there are times when entities create this synergy with their host, and they coexist together because they're benefiting each other. But there's also conditions where we can overindulge in certain things, such as drugs or alcohol, where the body becomes too low frequency for the soul to stay in it. So the soul has to get out temporarily. In this instance, there are other souls that have finished their incarnation, but they haven't quite understood that they're finished their incarnation, and or they're addicted to some of the experiences of being in the incarnate vehicle, such as experiencing drunkenness or experiencing drugs, that sort of stuff. So they can move into the body because the primary animating soul is no longer there. And so that's when you get a change of personality involved with somebody who's drunk, because there's another soul in there. But the other soul is usually angry or frustrated because it can't stay there all the time, and the energies start to become and the frequencies associated with those energies that are the body start to become disharmonious to them. So there's a bit of a fighting going on, because this soul shouldn't be in that body, unless it's a walk-in, a walk-in soul that's had the walk-in pre-planned before the incarnation starts, for example. Then we see souls coming in and out. Sometimes you get like an accident and the personality changes because the soul that's taken the body to that point in maturity has decided that's the time to leave, and another soul comes in because it doesn't want to go through the gestation process or the education process, those sorts of things. So you get souls can walk in an aggressive function because the body's disharmonious, because they're taking the drugs or having too many beers or whiskies, etc., etc. And you got those that can come in as a part of a plan. On the other side, you have bodies that have more than one soul in because of the function they have to do. Now, there's a number of different leaders in the world who've got more than one soul in the body, and although they're not the primary animating soul, they're there to give the animating soul advice on how to experience or how to work with different circumstances or different leadership roles. For example, presidents might do, or prime ministers or kings might do. Certainly those individuals who are in leadership roles when there's a significant function to do, like in war times, those sorts of things. We have to sort of, make people work together in a way which is unseen normally. I mean, how many people, would willingly go to the war, with the potential to not come back, a great potential to not come back. There's lots of people sort of volunteering to go into the army and the navy and the air force because they'd seen the light of this individual who was, a very charismatic leader. And that charisma and also the other leadership qualities might not be specifically associated with one soul, but other souls within the same body. Now, in the average sense, not in the specific sense of a body type being used to be a great leader, it's not uncommon, but not very, very not every day, that there's more than one soul in a body naturally, because there's an agreement that, for instance, one soul would be the primary animating soul. That's the soul that's experiencing the incarnation and interacting with the individuals in the circumstances they create, within the environments they create. And the others are just experiencing the incarnation, not interacting at all. But there are times when maybe a soul or two, or there's more than two, more three, maybe they get a bit enthusiastic and they want to participate. And then you start to get instances where a person will start to talk to other individuals that aren't there, or they're hearing voices in their minds and they're arguing against these voices and everything else. Then maybe the one voice is saying, "Yeah, do this and do that," or experience this or experience that, and maybe that soul's taking over, actually doing it. So there's three basic scenarios there that describe where you've got astral entities taking over, influencing the individual, or in fact creating a synergetic effect. You've got souls that have left their incarnation, but they haven't left the frequencies of the earth. They're still thinking they're incarnate, or they're seeking to experience the sensations associated with incarnation. So they seek out individuals whose souls have left the bodies because they've become paralytic with drink, or they've passed out because of drugs, and they take over the body temporarily. And then you've got the souls who are part of, let's call them the backseat passenger souls, who are experiencing the incarnation but not interacting with the incarnation, who get a bit enthusiastic and try to take over. So in that instance, there's these different types of interaction with souls and entities. And the blog that's which I sent out, which was basically a question and answer between myself and Ula Sarmiento of bigpicture.com, who we worked together on doing the Satsanga books. We've known each other for probably 11 years now, I suppose. Asked these questions, so I gave these answers. I actually did a recording. She transcribed and she said these are good, and she gives these wonderful blogs, far superior to mine. It's superbly illustrated. And she said, do you want to blog it? I said, well, I'll blog it and then obviously make a point of who's done it. So we worked together quite well. But it's interesting that the examples that were that she was working on, which were examples of the life of Jesus in terms of it removed demons from three different entities. One was Mary Magdalene, one was an aggressive individual wielding a knife in the marketplace or something. I think the other one was a young adult who had to be strapped down in the bed because the soul was trying to take over. And it was interesting that what I picked up, and I mean, I think from where Ulla got it from was I think it's a program called Chosen. It's another way of depicting the life of Jesus.
Yep.
I think. Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting that these examples are actually not just examples of Jesus removing these entities, and he would have had to have done a significantly larger amount of work than just say, leave her or leave him. There'd been a lot more energetic work to do than that. But there are good examples of the different types in way which entities can in fact interact with us synergetically, or that's the case may be, and how different souls can interact with us in a non-corporeal way.
Very interesting. So whenever I hear your description of that, it makes me think of there's a gentleman here in the United States by the name of Bob Lazar, who used to work at Area 51. I don't know if you've heard of Bob.
Yeah, I know Bob Lazar.
Oh,
Don't
you
know
know
him
Bob?
personally, but
Okay.
I know of him and what he was experiencing. Yeah.
So the clip that I'm referring to is when they ask him about religion. And I really liked Bob's response because he doesn't put any hypotheses or, it may be this or that. He just states the facts he said there was a file, about 3 or 4 inches thick that he was privy to when he was working there at Area 51. And it was on religion. And the commentator asks him about this on the video that I saw. It's like, well, okay, well, what did you learn? And Bob says, it just says that we're containers and that and so then the commentator is like pushing him on it. What does that mean? What does it mean? He's like, you can make it mean whatever you want, but you asked me what the files said, and the files say that religion was created to um, help us have a reason to protect the containers that we're in. Um, what are your thoughts on that? How does that
I
what
think
where's the accuracy in that? What are your
yeah.
differences of opinion there?
I was starting with the word I think. I'm not going to be more accurate than that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In my experience, all religions have the same root, but with a different voice of authority to explain how to maintain connectivity with who and what we really are whilst we're in a low frequency environment. So how to stay high frequency and therefore maintain our communicative bandwidth. On top of that, you start to realize that that's also teaching us that we're not the body, that the body is a container, a vehicle to allow us to navigate around the environment that we're in. In this instance, it's the Earth. And so how to maintain the vehicle, how to interact with the vehicle, and how to maintain the interaction at the right level with other individuals in their containers is a way in which we can maintain our higher frequency. When you maintain our higher frequency, we maintain our communicative bandwidth, which means we know who we are and what we are, even though we're in a low frequency environment. So it's a little bit like scuba diving. When we go scuba diving, we lose most of our senses apart from our hearing. Our hearing is the only thing that really, really stands out because sound in water, I think it travels 30 times faster than in air. I might be wrong with that, so don't hold me over the coals if it's wrong. But
Sure.
being a diver, I seem to remember that's about what it is. But we start to lose color in our eyes. We lose feeling in our hands because the skin gets waterlogged. And of course, we can't smell. We've got a diving mask on. And the only thing we can taste is the salt water. So we start to become sort of monochromatic in most of our senses. So we're losing a lot of our communicative ability with our environments because the senses are part of how we interact with the environment and how we navigate around it. We can't speak because we're having to breathe through an aqualung. So we can't breathe the water. Well, there's suggestions that we might be able to, but we can't breathe the water. So that's an example of being down in a low frequency environment. But being in a higher frequency environment is like being in the air where we normally are, and therefore we can use our five senses and body language to be able to communicate, and intuition, of course, to be able to communicate with other individuals who are in the air. So it's made the ability to maintain a high frequency state in a low frequency environment. And the different ways we can do that, mindfulness with Buddhism, Christianity by being of service to each other and teaching others how to be. We've got similar things with Islam, and Judaism. They're all different ways of explaining the same thing, but the different teachers have a different specialism basically that still led to the same thing. The problem is over the years, the quality of the teacher has disappeared, and the ability to be able to broadcast what they are experiencing themselves has disappeared because they're not experiencing it anymore. And then it becomes a control medium. So the religions are basically completely out of context from what they were originally designed to do, which is to help us maintain our higher frequency in one particular way that a particular master understood, and therefore we can maintain our communicative ability and know who and what we are. And in doing that, it allows us to understand that the body, the container, is simply a vehicle to allow us to navigate around the Earth. So you can see that what Bob Lazar was saying in very basic terms is that he understood that from the information that was there, that the body is just a container for a volume of sentience, which is experiencing a lower frequency environment, i.e. us in a diving suit experiencing a lower frequency environment, which is being under the water.
No, that's great. And it kind of takes us back full circle, which is, we just need to get more people realizing that making the right choices feels better. Because if it feels better, then we do more of it, right?
I mean, if we started to know, not feel or believe, but know that we are perpetual, and everything we do, provided it's done in the right way, provides a level of evolutionary acceleration, and therefore we start to increase our evolution to the point where we no longer need to be here, then wouldn't we think behave and act in a more mature way?
Yeah.
Let's help each other climb the ladder. I mean, look at how when we have environmental catastrophes, people don't worry about whether the person that's helping them is a criminal,
right?
And the criminal doesn't bother about whether the person that's helping them is a doctor or a lawyer. You're all helping each other get out of trouble. You're all clubbing together. You're all helping each other move people out of the rubble, to save the baby, to save the dog, to save the cat, to move away from the fire. If it's a bushfire, for example, we all work together. Not with the COVID-19. We had COVID. There was whole communities working together, albeit in a correct spacing process, to help each other in our everyday life. People would go to the shops and help people who couldn't go to the shops because they were isolating, for example. We were working collectively together. We were working in a collective way. We were starting to experience collectivism again. The unfortunate thing was it didn't last long enough to get it ingrained in our psyche. So we very quickly came back to the individual state of selfishness, basically. But we start to see again strife that the people in Gaza are experiencing, and they're all working together because they're experiencing something which they're collectively experiencing, not just one or two are experiencing. So they're all helping each other out. And so when we start to think that these events are there designed to help us stop focusing on ourselves and start focusing on all of us, we've all got to help each other, because if I help them, they'll help me, etc. Then we start to see that again, we come around in the full circle again, where if we start to think, behave, and act in a collective way, not a hive mind, but a collective way, then we're going to ascend the frequencies and move beyond the need to be here.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot to wrap up. Guy, I really appreciate your time. It's always awesome catching up with you, and I think let's end there on that positivity, because it's that's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. Why be negative when you can be positive? There's an old, I don't remember how many muscles are involved now, but there's significantly more muscles associated with frowning than there is in smiling. So
that's great.
Why waste energy?
Yeah, totally. Guy Needler, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and stick around just for a second, and I'll stop the recording. But thank you so much for joining us.
Sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Ashley on Nothing But the Truth for a Better You and Me.